When you tune into the songs on the radio, what do you hear? If you listen to the same radio station for any length of time, you will notice that you will basically hear the same songs over and over. And this is good. It happens that way on purpose. The radio stations have figured out that people generally want to hear the same songs over and over. Now occasionally there's a new song, but for the most part, people want to hear a song often enough to memorize the words and to sing along. Now when you come to worship the Lord through music in church, what do you hear? If you go to the same church for several weeks, months, and years in a row, too often, you will hear far too many songs. This is bad. Too many worship leaders wonder why their congregations are not passionately singing along. The answer is simple. The congregation hasn't heard the songs often enough. They hear a completely different set of songs each week, many of which are not really that great. If the lyrics were not projected onto the screen, the congregation would have no idea how to join in. And about the time they finally learn how to sing the song is considered too old to be effective. This is bad. Many congregants are not singing along during the worship service simply because they don't know the songs. Part of the reason they don't know the songs is because there are way too many and they're not all that great. Now let's talk about that a little bit more in today's weekly worship thought. In a later chapter, we will get super practical and talk in depth about pruning the master song list. But for today, I just want to look a little deeper at a real-life radio station as a case study. I pulled this random sample of songs that were played on an actual radio station over the course of 3 hours on a single night. I changed the names of the songs and the artists so we wouldn't get hung up on those unimportant specifics, but rather would be able to see some important principles that we can hopefully apply to our own song selection. So I replaced each song title with the word song followed by a number. If the song was played twice in the 3-hour time slot, it is colored yellow. If the song was played 3 times, it is colored green. Notice how many times a song is played more than once in a typical 3-hour radio time slot. There were 45 total songs played. If that were translated into a typical 5-song worship set, that would cover 9 weekly services. In that 3-hour time slot, of those 45 total songs, 33 of the songs were unique. 8 songs were played twice, 2 songs were played 3 times. Are you surprised by how colorful that column is? If that column were tracking 9 weeks of your weekly worship service set lists, how comparable would it be? Let's move on to the artists column. Of the 45 songs represented in this 3-hour time slot, there were 26 unique artists. 4 artists were played twice, represented in blue. 4 artists were played 3 times, represented in pink. 1 artist was played 4 times, represented in red. 1 artist was played 5 times, represented in the light blue turquoise color. Again, think about your typical weekly worship service song list. How does it compare to what you're seeing here? If you were to play 45 songs over the course of 9 weeks, would there be roughly 26 different artists represented? More? Less? And finally, let's look at the current, not current column. Of the 45 songs that were played, 29 of those songs were from this year or last. 16 of those songs were released 2 years ago or more. Notice also that there's a pretty good mix of current and not current songs. They are spaced quite nicely. Only once do we see 4 current songs in a row. Other than that, there's a pretty obvious pattern of 2 current songs and then a non-current song. This is intentional, and it is super helpful in keeping the audience engaged. Again, think about your typical weekly worship service song list. Do you have a good mix of current and not current songs? Are you keeping the congregation engaged while also offering something fresh? I encourage you to download the spreadsheet from the last section, which is available on my website, www.jeffpolenmusic.com. Feel free to use it as a bit of a template for selecting songs or as a grid for determining how effective your current song selection process is. I know that this concept is a bit abstract, but I think it will help us in our desire to lead people into an awareness of the presence and the glory of God by leading them in songs they know, love, have sung 100 times, and can declare passionately each week as they anticipate singing again soon. In this segment, I want to offer some practical advice on how to introduce a new song. Before I ever introduce a song to the congregation through the worship team, I'd like to introduce it passively. I will add the song to the pre-service or the post-service playlist so people can hear the song before we ever sing it together in the service. This helps to get the song into their minds, subconsciously preparing them to sing it together. When I introduce the song for the first time through the worship team, I like to offer a little story behind it. The song that I'm introducing today is called Lead Us to Righteousness. I wrote this song with some worship leader friends of mine. We were talking about how desperately our churches and our nation need unity and how only God can truly unify us. We were also talking about Psalm 84 and how the people in that psalm longed to be in the house of the Lord singing praise. They longed to be led in His righteousness. And that's where this song comes from. And it feels like a prayer that is really worth singing together. Now, do you see how that little snippet of a story made you more interested in singing the song? Or at least I hope it did. Now, before we actually sing the song together, I like to teach it to the congregation. So I'll say something maybe like this. Let me teach you the chorus quickly, and then we're going to sing this song together. So the chorus goes like this. Lead us to righteousness. Lead us to your glory, O God. Fill us with your Spirit and reign over all and in all. Let your kingdom come through us. So it's super helpful to give them a chance to actually hear what the song is going to be like before we sing it in real time. So then I actually lead it. Now this last part is really important. If I'm going to introduce this as a new song, I'm going to go ahead and play it again next week and the week after that. Then I'm going to let the song rest for 1 week and I'll play it again 1 week after that. The formula is simple. 3 weeks on, 1 week off, 1 week on. If the congregation is not singing this song with conviction and fervor on that last week, then it wasn't a good song and I'm never going to play it again. If they do, then it is a great song that will serve us for years to come. And the people will sing it because I helped them to know how. What was one interesting truth or idea that stood out to you today? And how do you plan to implement that truth or idea in the future? Were you surprised by how colorful the songs column was? If that column were tracking 9 weeks of your weekly worship service set lists, how comparable would it be? Do you think you play too many different songs, not enough different songs, or just the right amount of different songs? Were you surprised by what was revealed in the artists column? If that column were tracking 9 weeks of your weekly worship service set lists, how comparable would it be? Do you think your typical set list represents too many different artists, not enough different artists, or just the right amount of different artists? Why would this even matter when it comes to leading congregational worship? Were you surprised by the mix of current and not current songs represented? Do you think your typical weekly worship service set list has a good mix of current and not current songs? Do you think you are effectively keeping the congregation engaged while also offering something fresh? Do you think your typical weekly worship service set list encourages people to sing or hinders them from singing in some specific way? In what ways are you helping the people sing? In what ways do you think you may actually be hindering congregational singing?